meeting to order and acknowledge commissioners on Microsoft Teams. Acknowledge the new employees who are watching the commission meeting. Note that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the commission is meeting virtually. This meeting is being live streamed on the Port's YouTube channel. Pam, let's see.
Not needed.
I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the minutes of the regular commission meeting of November 11th, 2020.
I will so move.
Second. Thank you. Pam, would you lead us through the roll call vote, please?
Commissioners Alexander.
Present.
Kupro-Comas.
Aye.
Lamb. Levy.
Aye.
McDonald.
Aye.
Nemi.
Aye.
O'Halloran.
Aye.
Pierce.
Aye.
And Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Curtis for the executive director's report and his remarks.
Terrific. Thank you, President Kupro-Comas. Good morning, commissioners. Very nice to virtually see everyone this morning. I do also want to extend my welcome to our new employees who are watching via YouTube this morning. We just spent half an hour with them. I actually got to spend an hour with them talking about the port. Just a great crop of new employees across the port who are coming in at a very strange time, and we're just really excited to have them join. I also would like to acknowledge the port's monthly safety champions, who you'll see on the screen now. Again, a group of employees who are really looking out for both each other, sort of fellow port employees, but also our customers and our business partners. Really proud of their work. Stan, I wonder if you take a moment and just share a safety message with us today.
Thanks, Curtis. Glad to. Every day, lives are shattered and lost on our nation's roadways as a result of alcohol, drugs, and distracted driving. The statistics are alarming. One person tragically dies every 50 minutes in a drunk driving incident. Far too many families experience the pain of losing a loved one to impaired driving, and even more must cope with health and financial consequences that result from this illegal and avoidable conduct. During National Impaired Driving Prevention Month, we remember the lives lost as a result of those driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. We acknowledge the pain and suffering caused by impaired driving. We honor the brave law enforcement officers and first responders who risk their lives to protect our communities from this irresponsible behavior, and we resolve to never get behind the wheel unless we are sober. Operating a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or certain medications can have devastating consequences. Drunk, drugged, or distracted drivers experience diminished judgment, decreased motor coordination, and reaction time, putting passengers, pedestrians, and other drivers at grave risk. This holiday season and every day, we urge people to choose wisely, act responsibly, drive sober, and implore friends and loved ones not to get behind the wheel while impaired. By educating our workforce and communities on the importance of driving sober, we can help avoid loss of life, debilitating injuries, and unbearable heartache, which prevents people from enjoying full and happy lives. To further support prevention of drunk and drug driving, the Port's Employee Assistance Program, Cascade Centers, whose aim is to deter individuals from driving impaired, is giving the gift of a taxi, Uber, or Lyft ride this month. Helping us to ensure a safe holiday season, they are offering a $15 reimbursement towards the cost of a ride. So I encourage everyone to make a choice to be safe this holiday season and help others to do the same. Curtis, that's my message this morning.
Terrific. Thank you, Stan. Very, very important message, especially in this season. So many of our lives have been touched by drunk and altered driving. It just is a really important message. So thank you very much. By way of update, COVID has dealt a number of weird hands to the port. One of them is around the marine business. And since initial factory shutdowns in both the US and in Asia tied to the pandemic, we've seen a rapidly increasing volume of containers and autos moving in both directions at the port. In October, we handled more than 3,800 containers on the SM line vessels. Remarkably, our highest container count since March of 2015. We also handled more than 29,000 autos in October, the highest volume in a month since July of 2019. So, shout out to our partners on the waterfront. Everyone's trying to be safe and distanced where possible, and we're just really pleased with some big numbers out in the marine business over the last couple months. By way of announcement, ODOT and Washington Department of Transportation jointly announced the creation of a community advisory group and an equity advisory group to the I-5 Bridge Replacement Program, and they're accepting applications from community members interested in serving on these groups. I-5 Bridge Replacement is a very important project to the region. We care deeply about it. We're encouraging our friends and partners in the community to apply. Broad community participation is really critical to an equitable and transparent process around the I-5 Bridge Replacement. Many of you have asked about PDX Thanksgiving travel. We're encouraging people actually to be safe and stay home when they can. Over Thanksgiving holiday, we saw just under 200,000 travelers over that 10-day Thanksgiving travel period. That's a decrease of about 69% from 2019. It's a bit higher than the 61% decrease reported by TSA nationally. So we're just really seeing impacts at the airport. We're also preparing for an important milestone for PDX next month. On January 5th, we'll close the PDX Concourse Connector. That's the glass passageway that allows you to connect to the other side of the terminal from your gate. We're closing it due to main terminal construction. There's a lot of work out there already, but January will really be a hallmark date for us. Passengers will need to check their tickets to make sure they select the correct security line, as they'll no longer be able to cross the terminal in the connector to get to the other side. We have prepared PDX employee and passenger communications to prepare, reassure, and guide folks through really what will be one of the biggest impacts so far to passenger travel at PDX. So, Madam President, that is the sum of my comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. I'll call for a motion and second for approval of the Executive Director's report.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kouprokoumas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you. I will acknowledge that we've received a letter. The port has received a letter which has been forwarded to commissioners from Sean Williams, Vice President of State and Local Government Affairs for Airlines for America. We'll also be receiving a public comment from members and staff of SEIU Local 49, who will be on the call to provide us live testimony. I'm going to ask that they hold their comments until after Dan Pippinger's presentation, which is coming up next, so that we can hear their comments in the context of that presentation. So Curtis, calling you to introduce the first discussion item, please.
Great, thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, this is a conversation we've had several times over the past few years around both the social equity policy and the workplace initiative. We have been working across a range of issues at the airport, addressing not only our own employees and contractors, but also contractors of our tenants, the airlines. Dan Pippinger's here today to share with you an action that we're taking on wage requirements inside the airport. And we'll then also have an opportunity, obviously, for public comment and discussion. So, Dan, are you ready to go?
I am. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, commissioners. Good morning. Good morning to the public as well. As Curtis mentioned, I'm presenting today new wage requirements for certain workers at Portland International Airport. And we can go ahead to the next slide, Steve, please. In 2015, the port began to explore improvements to working conditions for employees at PDX, specifically who were not port employees, through what we called the Workplace Initiative. And while we've made some important steps in the last 5 years, community partners have continued to share that wage increases could have the greatest positive impact to these employees. And today's announcement is another step in the Workplace Initiative. We established a working group at the port to review the issue of wages for certain PDX workers, and I'm grateful for the team, which was led by Teresa Jacobs, a port attorney, for their thoughtful and measured approach during this challenging economic environment, where both businesses and workers alike are struggling with the impacts of the COVID pandemic. This action aligns with the port's social equity policy to balance business needs with helping those workers most in need. So the what? We started by benchmarking with other airports and also with regional governments, and determined that aligning with the regional market made the most sense given the wide variances at airports around the country. The starting point for the new wage requirement is based on the City of Portland's fair wage policy, which came into effect in 2015. This will apply to 2 categories of employees at Portland International Airport: air service providers and port contracted service providers. Air service providers include cabin cleaners, baggage handlers, janitorial staff, line maintenance, wheelchair attendants, de-icing services, fuelers, and security services. It does not include direct employees of the airlines or their wholly owned subsidiaries. Port service contractors include janitorial, parking, and security services. Outside of the port-held contracts, the air service provider businesses impacted by this wage requirement are on short-term contracts, which will facilitate a faster and consistent implementation of the minimum wage. We anticipate that this increase will impact approximately 900 workers when air travel picks up again. In recognition of the incredible stress on commercial aviation, we plan to implement the wage in 2 phases. The first phase will require the workers I mentioned before to be paid a minimum of $15 an hour as of July 1st, 2021. The second phase will occur on January 1st, 2022, to bring them to whatever the city fair wage is at the time. It is currently set at $16.55 an hour, but it could rise before that implementation date. We will match whatever the city's fair wage policy price point is on January 1st of 2022. After implementation, the port will index this wage to the Consumer Price Index, although we do reserve the right to and the ability in the future to adapt to future challenges, which frankly, I hope never to see again in my career like this, but we will reserve that. The port believes this wage increase will provide a solid foundation from which to continue to focus on shared prosperity moving forward. And I just point that the absence of other considerations should not be construed as a lack of future evaluation and possible action by the port, but we believe this is a good, reasonable step to take during this trying time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Dan, very much. I guess I will at this point call on the public members from SEIU and staff to provide their comment. As I understand it, we'll have comment from Donald Martin, Stan Edwards, Benjamin Dennis, and Felisa Higgins.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Donald Martin. I have worked 5.5 years at Portland International Airport as a passenger service agent, or PSA, for Huntley USA, assisting passengers who need a wheelchair to get to and from their plane. I'm also a member and a shop steward with SEIU Local 49. I like talking with people and helping them, so this is a great job for me. But the wages are a major problem. We came to the Port Commission in 2015 and asked it to create a wage standard for companies operating at PDX, like so many other airports have. The port refused, and a few years later, agreed to a $15 standard just for PSAs, but nothing for any of the other workers at the airport, like the cabin cleaners and baggage handlers. When the port finally agreed to raise the wage for us PSAs to $15, That was a step in the right direction. But that wage has been stuck there for a while. And the cost of living keeps rising and stops for no one. At $15 an hour, many of us still have to get a second job to get by. The lucky ones find a second job at PDX rather than having to spend time and gas money to get across town when time and money are short. We don't have enough money to even cover the basics. Every paycheck, nearly all of it goes to rent. And hope you don't need a vehicle. Most of us don't have one to get around, so we're bussing it. We should not have to be working 2 jobs. This is the richest country in the world, and the port likes to talk about the awards that PDX wins, the best of the West and all of that. We have lots of people working here who are just barely making it. We can't get ahead. There's no money left over after paying for rent and bills to save anything. Beyond the fact is unfair for any worker. There is also an element of racial injustice because a large part of PDX service workers are people of color. It's time for the port to raise the standard. If I could work 1 job at the airport and be paid enough to cover my bills, that would change my world entirely. So I could save. Right now, I can't save anything. I have grown kids and grandkids, and it is mathematically impossible for me to put anything away for them or for my retirement. I'm just surviving. It's heartbreaking when you see a paycheck. And after taxes, there is so little to work with. People come in to work sick because if you've already used the 5-6 days, sick days guaranteed by law, you don't get paid if you don't work, and that's not an option. That means eviction and sleeping on the street. Already, I've known many airport workers who have slept in their car or crashed on someone's couch because they can't afford rent, even working full time. Even if you have a paid sick day left to take, many of us have no health insurance, so people skip going to the doctor because we can't afford the bills. We have been asking the port to fix this problem for years, but it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. It's like the people in charge are saying, "We hear you," but we're not listening. Huntley USA got $13 million from the federal government under the CARES Act. To my knowledge, they have not given a single dime to any of us employees. I do not believe the airlines and their service contractors are ever going to do right by their employees just because it's the right thing to do. At airports all around this country, airport authorities are setting higher standards for them. We need the port to take action to adopt an airport workers' bill of rights, including a fair wage, affordable health care, and reasonable paid time off. Essential PDX workers have been signing a petition asking you to take action. These are workers who come to work every day, despite the pandemic, to ensure that planes are clean, to assist passengers with disabilities, to keep PDX running. We are submitting a copy of these petitions with our testimonies. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. March. I want to make sure that we've had the other guests able to join the call. So I will cede the floor then to Stan Edwards, I believe.
Stan may be out still interviewing with one of the, I think, channel leaders.
Okay. I also have listed Benjamin Dennis and Felisa Haggins.
Yeah, I'm here.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Members of the Port of Portland Commission, my name is Benjamin Dennis. I am a passenger services agent for Bags Inc. and have been working here at PDX since September of 2018. I provided testimony in March about the financial dire straits my coworkers and I have been in. because Bags pays wages that do not cover basic living expenses, and we now receive much less in tips due to the slowdown. I reported that, like many PDX workers I know, I have had to forego medical and mental health care because I have no health insurance and cannot afford the high-cost plan Bags offers. It has been 9 months since I spoke with you last, and a bad situation has gotten much worse. Now, in addition to everything else, we are facing higher risk of exposure to COVID as transmission rates skyrocket. And if any of us shows any sign of illness, we have to quarantine for 2 weeks. That means we lose pay, because we have no paid time off beyond the 5 sick days required by law. And that can mean financial disaster for many of us who are living on the edge. I am here with fellow PSAs from Huntley to ask you to please take immediate action to require that airline service providers pay better wages with affordable health insurance and reasonable paid time off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have Stan Edwards?
I believe Stan is in the waiting room. Pam, if you could.
Yeah, I am checking that, Commissioner Nemi, but I didn't get a notification. I will send him another link. Yeah, it's a direct link, so he shouldn't have to wait.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. This is Felisa Higgins. Sorry, I'm jumping in here. People are texting me that Stan's in the waiting room. So why don't I just get started? This is Felisa Higgins. I'm the political director at SEIU Local 49. We represent 15,000 workers in Oregon and Southwest Washington, including hundreds of workers at the Portland International Airport. In the jobs that Dan Pippinger just described, who clean aircraft cabins, the terminal, who are dedicated to keeping passengers healthy and safe and making airport travel possible. Our members at the airport are largely people of color, women, and immigrants. I want to start out the testimony today by thanking the Port for taking these steps and working in the committee to bring forward a wage proposal to the Port Commission. We feel like the work that the staff has done over the years has moved the conversation forward. However, we do want to highlight some changes that we'd like to see in the current proposal. I think Dan went through sort of the history of the Port's action on this topic around worker wages and benefits. I would just like to add a couple of direct points. I think one of the challenges is the industry's role in the subcontracting and outsourcing of airline jobs. If you were to look back over decades before, these jobs were directly employed by airlines and had the same wages and benefit standards that direct airline employees have. And what we've seen in this nation as a way to undermine workers' wages and benefits is the subcontracting of work and the lack of direct employment. The airline industry isn't the only industry to be doing this. However, the airline industry is a place where we feel that there can be direct action taken to raise workers and standards. What's come along with that subcontracting really is an example of the systemic racism in our system, where we hire women, immigrants, people of color into these low-wage, non-benefited, subcontracted jobs. And then when a subcontractor tries to make movement to either raise standards or make changes, what we see is the airlines taking action to switch to another subcontractor to undermine those wages and benefit changes. This is where the Port's role could directly impact these workers and stop this, this subcontracting culture that continues to drive down wages and standards for workers. It also is imperative that this is in the Port's interest. What we've seen and what we've done studies on is the incredibly high turnover that has happened at the Port of Portland. In 2017, we did an analysis where the turnover of the badge analysis, where the turnover rate at the Port of at PDX for these workers ranged from 59.3% to 142.8%. There have been many studies that show both the turnover and subcontracting is a cost not only to the employers, but also the quality of service that is being received by passengers and other people at the airport. You'll see we'll submit written testimony with a full chart of the standards that other airports and that Stan alluded to in his testimony about the other actions that other airports have taken throughout the West Coast and throughout the country. But I want to just highlight one standard that's been set recently during the middle of the COVID crisis. The Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport adopted a new wage standard in October. And in November, a new policy was approved at San Francisco that will require airport service employers to provide employees full family medical insurance valued at $9.50 per hour. That would bring the minimum compensation for an SFO worker to more than $28 per hour, including wages, health insurance, and paid time off. This is a really critical time when I think about when you look at the damage that this COVID pandemic is doing. The communities that are most affected are communities that make less than $27,000 a year and are disproportionately people of color. These are the workers that we're talking about when we are talking about the ASPs at the airport and the cleaners. So the actions that we're asking the port to take today and that are before you today are very critical, not only for the economic well-being of the group in this community, but also to help prevent and stop the spread of a disease that's ravaging in particularly these communities. I think that the federal bailout is another conversation that has sort of been a topic. And I know that along with the Port of Portland, the airlines, as well as the subcontracted service providers, SEIU was directly there advocating on a daily basis during the bailout. And we continue to try to advocate during the bailout for money into not only just the industry, but directly to these impacted workers. And I'm sure that many of you on this call, and I know Dan and Curtis have expressed their frustration and other folks have expressed their frustration about the lack of a second round of bailouts, which we're all waiting for with incredibly bated breath. But in the meantime, we do need to take action locally at the state as well as the national level and here at the Port of Portland. The bailout didn't reach the workers that it needed to reach, as you saw in Stan's testimony. What we saw is many airline service providers laying off workers before accessing the bailout account, so that we saw a decline in their overall workforce before they got the money to sustain the workforce that they needed, as well as none of those dollars trickling down to the direct impact on the workers who are there every day on the front lines showing up at the airport. That's really concerning for us. Of course, we reached out to Treasury and our congressional representatives to try to enforce that. And like many things with this administration, we've seen little to no action. And so we believe the policy that's in front of you also could help with some of that direct action and impact for these workers. I think in March we outlined a path forward, and I think that the current proposal is an improvement and meets some of the needs of that path. We believe that there's a couple of things that could change in this current proposal that would make it better and meet the needs more quickly of the workers that we're talking about. On our preliminary analysis, under the port's proposal, we have seen as much as 60% of the workers covered would not receive a raise until July 2021. And 13% would receive no raise at all, continuing to leave some PDX workers behind. I also think that this pandemic has created an immediate need, and I understand that we need to balance the economic impact of the industry and the economic impact of the workers. However, the industry is doing significantly better than the workers who are on the front lines today, and they're not doing well either. I hear that. And the overall impact to their bottom line is minuscule when you look at the dollars that are flowing through airlines and airline subcontractors. The changes I'd like to propose to the policy that the port has laid out is passenger service assistants who currently earn $15 an hour would be moved to $16.55, which is the city's fair wage policy, as alluded to, or as Dan Pippinger pointed out, July 1st, 2021. That would be as opposed to waiting until January 1st, 2022. All workers or job classes who currently under $15 would be covered by the expanded ordinance and would move to 15 on July 1st, 2021. And then again to 1655, the city's fair wage policy on July 1st, 2022, knowing that the city's fair wage policy could be adjusted in between those times. And then after all of that, I think that we really support the port's proposal that we would tie this to the Western Region CPI so that we could have an ongoing expectation and see these wages increase and workers could have some consistency and assurances. One of the pieces of the proposal that we feel like is really missing, well, there are two, but one that we think is really critical right now to implement is 3 additional days of paid time off beginning July 1st, 2021. I think Stan alluded to this, and what we've seen is the spread of the pandemic is when a low wage worker doesn't have the time they need to take time off, they go to work sick. It's true. And it has been a huge part of the spread of COVID. And I want to believe, like I think everybody on this call, that what we're gonna see a vaccine. We've already seen one roll out in Britain, but Oregon gets 147,000 doses in the first round of that vaccine. That is almost exactly the number of healthcare workers and nursing home workers in our state. And so that will leave other frontline workers like airport workers, janitors, cleaners without a vaccine, most likely heading into 2022. And I'm sure other folks on this call, Alice and others, have heard this bad news from their health system. So I hopefully am not the first one to deliver this terrible news. That means that workers will still be exposed to the pandemic. And so the additional 3 days of sick days would leave 14 days of paid time off. We all know that is not enough to recover from this disease that ravages people. However, we do know that that's enough to sort of put into the bank to allow people to stay home at their height of the spread. And then we would like to have a pathway to affordable healthcare long-term. And we'd like to have the port create a subcommittee that involves stakeholders and other folks who are looking at these in other industries for low-wage workers so that we can figure out how do we get there so that workers are not making the choices that Stan and Ben and others have outlined between rent and food and the cost of their healthcare. Those are the changes that we think could help PDX build back better and truly create a shared dial on prosperity and on racial justice. Again, we want to thank the port for the work that they've currently done, and we want to be in a continued conversation about how this can be improved. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stan
Edwards, yeah, thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
No, I'm sorry. It took me so long to log on here. It's been hectic. But if you guys want to hear from me, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. I know it seems like you guys are at the meeting.
We would like to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Again, my apologies. So again, for those of you who don't know, my name is Stan Edwards. I work for Help Me USA. Been here for 7 years, and I really was. I mean, I don't know what I missed, but forgive me if I'm backtracking or if I'm saying some stuff different from what I missed. But I really believe in these worker bill of rights. Basically, let me give you my story real quick. Again, 7 years. I work 5 days a week. I get here at 4:30 in the morning. Once I get here, I clock on. I'm a type of guy that's basically. I'm very happy going. So that means if you sit in my chair and I push you to your plane or from your plane, you're going to get a positive experience. So basically, let's say that you're in my chair and I'll take you from the ticket counter to your plane. That's about between like a 15 to 30 minute run. And I understand when people, let's say you get in a fight with your husband, you get in a fight with your kids, or the dog just messed up your work project, and you're upset, and by the time you get to me, you're by the time you get to me, man, I'm the punching bag, and I don't care because it's my job to get you to point A to point B safely, so you don't miss that flight. And and with my personality, with my humor, you know what, I'll try to lighten the situation. So that's part of the things I go through. Sometimes, like today, I had to go pick up this lady with 4 pieces of luggage. This was today, in a wheelchair, all in the parking garage. But I made it happen. Got her in, got her checked in, took her to the end of the concourse at E12, got her there on time, pre-boarded, and basically, I love doing that right there. I understand, sometimes, life is hard. It's hard. We go through a lot. We really do. I'm asthmatic. I'm diabetic. I'm 2 of the 4 risk factors. And there's times where post-pandemic, I would come to work sick. I don't do it now for obvious reasons. But, I have to come to work sick. Well, and basically because I have no health, I had good health insurance, but, it was too expensive. Huntley's health insurance, the deductibles, and all that is just too high. So I'm just trying to cowboy through it. But at the same time, it's just like there's times where I have to make real life decisions. Do I have to, do I eat or do I get this? Do I pay out of pocket for this asthma medicine do I need or this diabetic medicine that I need? I pay bills too. I got rent, I got car payment, I got car insurance, I have my phone, I have all these other stuff. So at the end of the day, I have barely enough money to eat. Now you say, well, what about food stamps? I make too much money going food stamps. This is why the Worker Bill of Rights is really important to me. And what Don said, and what Ben said, it's just that, honestly, I think they're asking for $3 more minimum wage. Okay, thank God for Governor Brown. We made, she gets 15, but 15 is still not enough because this is like if I'm struggling at 15, what about the person that works, who works here at the airport? Their minimum wage is $13.25, and if I'm struggling at 15, God knows what they're going through. I'm only one person, but just to make I know I'm rambling here, but just, I'll just say this. I'm totally for this Worker Bill of Rights because it will help us out a lot. I don't know how many of you guys ever used a wheelchair service or not, or if your parents used it, your aunts, your uncles or whatnot. But I'm telling you, it's just like we are part of this. We're part of this that, we make the airport going. People talking about 6 feet. When you're pushing a person, we're less than 6 feet, and I don't know if you have it. You don't know if I have it, and if I catch it, I'm 56 and I got 2 of the 4 risk factors. I'm not going to recover, so there I am. Let's say I catch it. I'm sitting in the hospital room. I got grandkids. I have daughters, that can't come see me, so, that's why this healthcare thing is really, really important. So let me end it by saying this. I don't know what you guys talked about, before I got on, but please, 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 push forward this Worker Bill of Rights because, it's a step in the right. It is a step in the right direction, and that is it for me.
Thank you very much to all of you for joining our call today and providing us your input. I want to turn it over to commissioners for questions or comments. Anyone?
This is Meg. I do have some comments to make. Thank you, President Kupriel-Comas. Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first, I really want to thank the PDX airport workers who have been there for us through this pandemic and for your testimony. And I know we're not taking action today, And I don't personally benefit in any way, but I do want to disclose a potential conflict of interest because I'm the president of a union that represents workers at PDX. You know, I was so proud to join this commission because I'm the granddaughter of immigrants who came to this country to make a better life. And most of them were able to do that by working in the maritime and port industries. They had good jobs as shipbuilders, as longshoremen, as merchant marines. As we look at the work of the port today and in our future, the major focus is PDX. That's why we are making a multi-billion-dollar investment in our airport. And I think we need to do more to make sure today's port jobs are good jobs and good jobs for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and immigrants who make our country work today. And I know we have made progress. And last month, I was so proud as a Port Commissioner to applaud our commitments around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We saw slides that said we are committed to promote social equity using a racial equity focus, to advance fair and equitable inclusion for all people, and to leverage the port's strengths and assets to create a more equitable and prosperous region with prosperity for all. In the year I have been Port Commissioner, I have really been looking with a racial justice lens, and I have seen the place that we can do the most to increase prosperity for all is by improving the wage and benefit standards in the workplace initiative. And if you travel from PDX, you know the wheelchair workers are women, are people of color, and are immigrants. If you've been on the commission for a long time, or at these meetings, you've heard from these workers like we did today, countless times that many are nearly homeless, cannot go to the doctor, and don't have more than the 5 days of sick time that is also their vacation. And that was even before the pandemic, and no one has bailed out these workers. And yet they have shown up for every plane that arrives. They have cleaned those planes with minimal PPE and risked their lives while many employees can work safely from home. You know, I know we received as commissioners a letter from the Airlines for America showing their opposition to improving wages and benefits for the workers who serve their airlines through subcontractors. Because it's true. The reason there has not been more done to provide these good jobs here at PDX is due to airline opposition. And now they say they're in a crisis because of the pandemic. Well, they were just as opposed to raising wages and benefits for these Black, Brown, and Indigenous workers a few years ago at the height of their profits when they were doing stock buybacks and paying shareholders huge dividends, rather than saving for a rainy day. We're commissioners appointed to represent the community and people of Oregon, and I know we can do more. I would like to see the Port of Portland be a leader on social equity and prosperity for all. But today, even with these proposals from staff, we'll be behind other airports across the country. We'll be behind Oakland, SFO, LAX, San Jose. And they have faced the same opposition from airlines and stepped up for good jobs at their ports. And as you heard from Felisa Hagen, some of them, like Minneapolis, St. Paul, have raised standards during this pandemic because they know the economic and health crisis workers are facing, and they need bailed out now and not a year from now. Many of us have said to each other, we should build back better. And I think this is an incredible opportunity for us to do that. I hope the staff will take the testimony given today into consideration and have additional conversations with commissioners before finalizing the next steps of the workplace initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Nemi. Other commissioners?
I have just one question. Is my voice being heard?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Earlier, I heard that relative to these workers, for these recommendations are being made or being considered, the current paid leave benefit, I guess, points to only 5 days paid leave a year. Is that correct? And if so, just educate me. What is the historical background to that in terms of I guess the disparity between that group gets about 5 days a year, and some other, I guess, industries, including corporate that I have been part of, and even the municipalities and the government, I guess the employees. I think they seem to get a little more, but who decides that and where does it come from? Could somebody educate me just a couple of minutes? Thanks so much.
Commissioner Saruda, Dan Pippinger here. The current paid time off requirement is set by the state of Oregon. I cannot give you a historical background of paid time off. I'm sorry. There is also some temporary federal relief for paid time off as part of the Coronavirus Response Act, but that currently is expiring at the end of this calendar year. That was specific for the pandemic. But the current requirements for employers here in the state of Oregon is set by the state of Oregon.
This is Felisa Higgins. Do you mind if I jump in here really quickly? I think I might help a little bit with this. So the current state, as Dan said, the current state offers 7 days. That's why we're asking the port to extend it additional 3 days. So you would have 10 paid days plus your weekend days would get you to the 14 recovery days. The paid time off that was set by the federal government excluded companies over the size of 500. And even though working directly at the airport, we see a small portion of these workers, so 100, 200 of them. A lot of them work for companies that are significantly over that 500 size limit when you add in their national subsidiaries. And so many of them were excluded. The state did offer a coronavirus relief fund that workers could access if they were able to, for quarantine time. However, the access to it is if you are required to quarantine by a physician. And so it also leaves workers in this gap where you don't have the money to go to the doctor to get the quarantine time. You don't want to miss your days off to because you're feeling ill. I think that Stan pointed out, he used to come to work sick all of the time until the pandemic. And I think workers are trying to act as responsibly as they can, but they're just in this box. So it really is federal and state requirements that have even gotten people to the current 7 days under the law. Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So not 5 days, but the 7, right? Because I heard in the earlier testimonies, I think somebody said 5, but it's currently 7. I understand the background. Thank you very much.
Dan, I wanted to ask just why the committee was moving ahead with the timing that we're looking at here, that you're looking at in terms of the January and then July. Could you talk to that?
Yes, it's really in response to the economic conditions and the drop in commercial aviation. Our employments at PDX are down 70%, and along with that is revenue down that same amount. And the same is true for the airlines, struggling to get people to travel again. And of course, we're in a second wave of the virus. So the idea would be to give them some runway, so to speak, to plan for the first increase, and then the second increase after that. We're hoping that there's an improvement in employments and that they start to perform better. But you'll note that there's no requirement for employments. We're setting these hard dates. So while we all hope it's going to get better, we'll just have to see how it all plays out.
So it sounds like you did consider tying it to improved conditions or improved employments, but decided instead on a time-based model.
That's correct. I think it's trying to balance out the needs of the workers with the industry that supports them as well. And if we tied it to the number of employments, different airlines have different levels of profitability and things like that. So by being definitive about the dates, we're just acknowledging that we have to find that balance. And maybe it's not perfect for some, and obviously there's some airline pressure not to do this, but I think it's an important step for us to take as part of our program.
My other question relates to Ms. Hagen's suggested a task force on healthcare. Is that something that's being considered by staff?
We have not been thinking about that. I have been in contact with SEIU. They have discussed this. We have been in touch with a lot of the labor groups, just like we are with our business partners. We also have the PDX Citizens Advisory Committee already established. Generally, we don't cover worker benefits there, but we have a lot of avenues of engagement. I think if we were going to look at things that complex, we would need a lot more assistance from different people versus just the port itself.
I want to provide other commissioners an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments.
Well, I have Sean.
Commissioner Holleran, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to thank the port and Dan Pippinger and the team for seriously looking at this issue. And I think there are some really legitimate concerns that have been raised, and I think our frontline workers and the service that's provided here, and given the pandemic is a real challenge, but it's also important to acknowledge the economic pressure airlines are under that the pandemic has brought about. And I think trying to find that fine line where we're treating our workers with everything we can do to provide for their quality of life, and trying to balance that out against the economic pressure that our industry is under. So I really appreciate that view, and I encourage the port to continue reaching out and having this conversation. I appreciate the steps we've taken to move forward. And I just want to add that as a comment, and in recognition of the really important work that these people are doing, and just I'm grateful for that. It's a huge part of the service we provide, and I just want to say thank you to both and encourage us to keep the conversation alive.
Well, this is Catherine. Thank you, Dan, for your update on PDX Workplace Initiative. And I appreciate the insights the staff did the research and recommendations. I think it's a good idea to bring a policy in line with City of Portland wage policies, but it is our responsibilities to balance the needs of frontline workers, our business partners, and community stakeholders. I think that we must work to ensure our frontline workers have what they need to support themselves and their families, while we ensuring that we are creating an environment where businesses can sustainable in this difficult time. We must be careful that our policy do not unintentionally harm the small woman and minority-owned business that are trying to provide opportunities for their employees and their own families. And that's all I have to input. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lamb. Any other input from the commission?
Madam President, this is Pat McDonald, and I had some further questions. I wanted to understand the paid time off piece of this a bit better, and what's being proposed and what's being asked for. So where are we in terms of the delta between what I'm thinking is what was mentioned, what does it take for us? And I understand the wage, stepping into the wage increase and the timing of that and balancing all the needs. I'd like to understand the commentary of how can we step into getting to a 14 days if somebody needed it during this pandemic, to assure that they could, if they needed to, have that paid time off covered. I wanted to be clear on that, where we're at.
Dan?
Thank you, Commissioner. We did not address paid time off as part of this step. We considered that, but we considered with the economic challenges right now that the wage was the priority. I certainly acknowledge the health concerns in the pandemic. I would note that there's, other ways to do that in terms of testing, but I also understand people don't have insurance and things like that. So it's a very complicated picture for that, but we did not address, and nor do we have a proposal for paid time off as we're making this step right now. Obviously, it's a, as I mentioned in the presentation, we think of this as a step, not a checking the box and walking away, but a long journey on shared prosperity. And it's a likely area for us to investigate next as we move forward.
Thanks, Dan. I think Felisa Haggins wants to respond as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to clarify what we're trying to ask for. So the state currently provides 40 hours. We are trying to get to an additional 3 days, we've moderated our proposal from March. And then we would have the weekend days as included. I hear the port's concerns and the balance concern. The timeline on this, I think, is really critical. And so what we've seen is in the move forward in these policies, we've seen years in between these steps. And right now, the crisis is right now around this issue. I think the crisis has always been here, but it is bearing down in a different way right now.
Thank you. I see that someone else has their hand raised, but I can't tell who it is. I think Commissioner Nemi is one. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. I hear the concern about the airline industry and the overall profitability. I mean, what would this increase in? I think you guys have done some data on what the increase in or the cost of would be to the airlines, or what percentage of their profitability it would be. Especially there's 2 phases I see here, which is one, moving to 15 workers who are not yet at 15, which is very few, I think. And then over a year from now, the increase to the Portland. So what do we know that this would cost the airlines?
Thank you, Commissioner Nemi. Our estimate is that the first step to July 1st, on July 1st of 2021, will cost the airline service providers, which cost to be passed on to the airlines, close to $500,000 if they were at 100% staffing, which we don't think they are because of the downturn in business. So we think it's more like around $300,000, and to the port for that time period, close to $100,000. On the second phase, the annual cost we estimate for when service comes back to the airline service providers will be close to $4 million, and to the port itself around $630,000, although some of that, about 20 to 25% of that, would be passed back to the airlines as well. So they would be looking at just around $4.2 million for cost if fully staffed.
Thank you. I think. Sorry, Commissioner Nemi, did you have a follow-up? Okay. I think we have Commissioners Alexander and Levy in that order, please.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I do want to offer my appreciation for not only the testimony offered today, but the work that's gone into bringing this set of recommendations forward. I think the one thing that COVID has sort of communicated is that we are all in this storm together, although we cannot lose sight of the fact that people are in different vessels. And that is the opportunity that's in front of us. I see this as a beginning point. I see that the work that is encompassed in these recommendations is a good starting place. I see that there's a candid recognition of what else needs to be done as well. And all I would ask is that there be a real recognition that while we are not where we need to be, we are also not where we used to be in terms of how we've approached these issues and these challenges. This is the uncomfortable space that's created when people decide to look and engage these issues and to stay with them. This is not a drive-by. This is a beginning effort that begins to say, what have we addressed and what do we need to continue to address? I am buoyed by the fact that there are best practices that we can now begin to look at around the country and around the region. And I think the issue for us is to decide the most appropriate place for all of the stakeholders here to position themselves within the insights that will be known to us around these best practices. So, you know, I don't come out as feeling as if this is a fait accompli. I also don't come out feeling that we're not going to have difficult discussions. But once we're engaged in this dialogue, we've got to stay there. And we have to understand that there are a myriad of stakeholders who we need to address. And if we can approach this in the way that we've approached the work so far, we will be further down a path to an equitable place for all of our stakeholders to be as a part of this. So I just want to offer that. I am very appreciative of the willingness and the engagement to stay in this uncomfortable space, because we have no option but to do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
I'm sorry, is that Alice Bob Levy? Certainly appreciate what Catherine and Michael have said and all of the rest of the input, but I agree that it's a really, really difficult subject. It's hard to talk about it. Certainly there's both sides. I understand that the initiative only affects the airport service workers, but I think the cross elasticity of workers and wages between there and our concessionaires and other people in the airport is something that is going to have to be considered. So I think as the conversation broadens, if we engage in that conversation, I think we'll come to a reasonable solution that will protect our businesses and protect and enhance the workers' ability to make something that's closer to a living wage. So I appreciate all the discussion.
Thank you. Commissioner Alexander, did you have a follow-up?
No, Madam President, I'm sorry, I didn't take my hand down.
That's okay.
Been out of class too long, I guess.
Well, I will just tie the conversation up. I think from my perspective, I want to encourage port staff to continue to look deeply at this. Particularly, I'd like for there to be some thought about whether there's a way to accelerate the pay increases over time, particularly as conditions change. I appreciate wanting to give the airlines and the subcontractors an opportunity to plan, but these are also short-term contracts, and so you know, if we could build in some way to accelerate or continue to look at this and see whether we can move faster, I think that would be to the benefit of the workers that we're talking about here, who again, you know, we're talking about 12 months of rent that they have to pay in the meantime. And I appreciate very much the work, and I want to commend both the folks who came to give testimony today, because I know it takes time away from your other responsibilities, as well as the port staff who worked on this. And I want to encourage us to continue to look at this. I know that this work goes on at the port all the time, and I appreciate the transparency about it, and want to encourage the staff to bring to us, as you move forward on workplace initiative pieces, to let us know where you are and how it's affecting both the port and its business partners, as well as the employees of these subcontractors.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, our next, let's see. I'm going to call on Bobby Stedman to introduce the next general discussion item, Small Business Annual Report.
Thank you, Madam President. As stated, we would like to present to you our annual small business report. You know, we all know that small businesses are a vital contributor to the economic vitality of our region. The Port Small Business Development Program was developed to ensure that small businesses are provided an equal opportunity to compete for and to perform port contracts, and to provide small businesses with technical resources needed to grow and improve their businesses. We're really proud of the work that we've done in this area over the past year and are prepared to increase small business participation and diversity of the workforce that performs work on those contracts in the upcoming year. As recipients of FAA funding, the Port also has an obligation to set goals and track participation for projects and concessions at all 3 of the Port's operating airports. These goals are set and participation is tracked and reported by the Small Business Development Office. This Small Business Development Office and mighty team of 3 partner with ODOT in our Ports Mentor Protege program. This is a 3-year program and is specifically designed to provide small businesses with education, mentoring, and support services needed to become self-sufficient, thriving businesses. In fiscal year 20, 16 proteges received 37 contracts for a total of $9.5 million in awards. We're really pleased and impressed by that, but I don't want to steal too much of Kimberly's thunder. She's going to get into a little bit more detail around the Mentor Protege program. But I do want to acknowledge Kimberly's leadership in doing this work and the great partnership that we have with ODOT. So Kimberly Sutton, she's the Port Small Business Development Program Manager, and she's here this morning to provide an overview of the various small business programs, as well as an update on our accomplishments and progress for this past year and future program initiatives. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Kimberly.
Thank you, Bobby, for the kind introduction, and thank you everybody for having me this morning. I'm Kimberly Sutton, and I get the pleasure of managing the Port Small Business Programs. And I'm going to provide an update on how we did with all of the various programs that are kind of under that umbrella. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the Small Business Development Program is to enhance opportunities to small businesses in the region through ensuring non-discrimination in contracting, leveling the playing field for small businesses and port opportunities, removing barriers to participation, and assisting in the development of firms to successfully compete in the marketplace. Next slide. The Port Small Business Development Program is comprised of 4 unique programs that are designed to complement each other to develop small businesses and provide a gateway to port business opportunities. The Small Business Program, which we refer to as the SBE program, is a small business program which applies to all port-funded opportunities. This program is inclusive of all small businesses certified by the state of Oregon or the state of Washington. Certifications include minority-owned, women-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned, and emerging small businesses. Our DB program is our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, applies to all federal grant-funded airport improvement projects such as runway improvements. This program is a requirement of the Federal Aviation Administration. Our Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, ACDBE, similar to the DB program, is also a requirement of the Federal Aviation Administration and applies to all concessions-related activity at PDX, such as food and beverage, retail, and car rental opportunities. And then finally, my favorite program, the Ports Mentor Protege program, is a nationally recognized small business technical assistance program. The program provides education, coaching, and development to small businesses and supports the Port in meeting our small business contracting goals. I'm going to provide additional information on each of these programs in the following slides. Next slide. The Port Small Business Enterprise Program, although it's not a legal requirement, the Port operates it because it's the right thing to do. The Port has an interest in the economic wealth of the region and has made the decision to not only set goals on our DBE projects, but also on our non-federally funded port projects as well. An SBE is any small business that is certified by the state of Oregon or state of Washington, and we allow any certifications by those agencies. Typical are the minority, women, emerging small business, and veteran-owned. The port examines construction contracts valued $500,000 or more, and using our disparity study availability findings that were completed in 2018, we established small business participation goals for each project. The lowest bidder must meet the small business participation goal established or prove they made every effort to do so to our team. Professional services contracts are solicited through a request for proposal process. The RFPs have language asking firms to make small business commitments, which then become the project goal and is monitored by our outstanding compliance team. All firms awarded contracts are required to meet with the small business development staff, provide a subcontracting plan which is approved prior to the start of work, and are required to attend regular monitoring and compliance meetings to ensure vendors are not only following through with their small business commitments, but also have the additional support of the port staff if any issues arise pertaining to small businesses during the life of the project. During FY20, the port awarded 11 contracts that were in this threshold of over $500,000. Oops, did I lose my slides?
Yeah. We can't see them either.
Yeah.
Yes, I've not had them at all.
Oh, let's go back. Steve, is there a way to get the slides back?
Yeah, just give him a minute.
Okay.
Frozen.
There we go. I'm back. All right. Hopefully, you guys remember where I left off, so we can continue on here.
Commissioner Alexander, can everybody see the slides now?
I did until yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Normally, when there's technical difficulties, it's my fault, so I'm just really glad this time it's not me.
Looks like he's still working on.
Yes.
I'm putting this in presentation mode for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So here's how we did for FY20. The port awarded 11 contracts that were in the formal threshold of 500,000 or more. Of those contracts, 3 were directly awarded to small businesses. Additionally, 40 subcontracts valued at 1.7 million went to certified small businesses, resulting in a overall achievement of 22% of contract dollars awarded and 40% in the total number of contracts awarded to small businesses. I think this is outstanding. The 40% number really indicates that our prime contractors are breaking up these contracts into reasonable pieces that makes it easier for small businesses to take advantage of. And the 22% is slightly higher than our disparity study findings of 20%. So good job, everybody. Let's see here. Next slide, please. So as we talked about, the ports disparity study completed a few years ago, 2018, had our ports overall goal at 20%. So that took a look at what we typically purchase and what availability is in the ports marketplace for small businesses to supply those purchases. So the community anywhere from construction to commodity to engineering services. That goal is at 20% overall. This graph illustrates the history of achievement in small business contracts, including subcontracts, and it shows both the number and the percentage of contracts awarded over the years. As you can see, the port has exceeded our small business goals, both in dollar and number of the contract. This is an indication, as I mentioned earlier, that contracts are being broken up, which is really the best way to get small businesses a piece of the pie. You just break it up into feasible pieces so that they can take on a portion of the work. We now have enough historical data over the last 3 years since our disparity study to look at that number of contracts goal and determine if we want to increase that based on the history that we have of exceeding that. And that's what our team will be looking at in the next coming year to see if we want to raise that, which looking at our data and the number of contracts, I think we will be raising that goal. Next slide. The Ports DBE program is comprised of minority and women-owned small businesses that are certified as DBE by the state of Oregon or the state of Washington. As a recipient of federal financial assistance from the US DOT through the FAA, the Port establishes DBE goals for all federally funded procurements. Goals are set using US DOT goal-setting regulations, which require the Port to review each anticipated FAA-funded contract for the next 3 years and determine how many DBEs are available for the type of work that will be contracted, and then compares this to the overall availability of all firms to perform work on the project. This analysis provides the Port our 3-year goal and is required to be updated whenever new FAA grants are awarded to the Port. The Port must establish 3 separate DBE goals for each operating airport. So as you can see by the graph there, it shows each of our airports, what our established goals are, and how we've accomplished. As you can see, Hillsborough and Troutdale had no awards during that period, so therefore there's nothing to report on. However, PDX had 1 contract. The overall goal for PDX is 11%. We achieved 10.2% in that category. Although it looks like we did not meet goal, it's important to understand that we only had the 1 project, and although the 11% is our anticipated overall goal for the 3-year period, we anticipated year 1, which was FY20, that we would achieve 9.3%. So for the contract that we let out in FY20, we actually went almost 1% higher than what we thought we would when we anticipated the goal with the FAA. So it's a little misleading when you're setting a 3-year goal and you have different contracts letting each year, and that 3-year goal is that overall average. So although we didn't meet our overall goal 11%, I feel pretty good because we exceeded the anticipated goal for year 1 that we were going to achieve. Let's see here. And then other things to note is additionally, the Port must adhere to strict requirements in the contracting process for DBE contracts. And so there's always a challenge in exceeding goals. So whenever we're able to get there, we feel pretty good about ourselves because there's a lot of outreach involved, and our team really works hard to reach out to the DBE community and make sure they have everything they need before a project goes to bid, and that they're prepared to bid on the work. Next slide. DBE goals are set using our disparity study, and it also determines our marketplace for the Port. As you can see, this our historical snapshot of how we've done over the last few years here at PDX. Our goal went down from 11.95% to 11% for FY20, and that's all determined on what work is coming down the pipeline. We'll be at 11% for the next 3 years, and then we'll have to go back out and readjust our goal at that time. We are constantly working with our DB community to explore ways to increase the capacity of firms in our community that can bid on future runway work. We do recognize that runway work, which is typically what these DB dollars are used on, are inherently a barrier for small contractors to take advantage of because bonding limits are so high, as well as the nature of runway work requires heavy machinery that is very costly for folks to invest in. And so our team is constantly out in the community working with them to see what we can do to overcome those barriers and then connect them to the opportunities that are taking place. And we'll continue to do that. Next slide. The ACDB program is also a federal requirement. Airports that receive FAA funding must have an ACDB program and must ensure that small, minority, and women-owned businesses have an opportunity to operate either as concessionaire or to provide goods and services related to airport concession activity. Car rental concessions activity is tracked separately from in-terminal concessions activity. We have continued to exceed the Port's goal, due in large part by the ability and willingness to direct negotiate lease opportunities with ACDBE vendors when they become available, and the Port's aggressive outreach when new opportunities exist for the program. Like the DB program, the Port must establish a 3-year triennial goal for its ACDB program. The Port establishes this utilizing our disparity study from 2018. During FY20 for Concourse E extension, we saw 4 new concessions open up: Screen Door, Jamba Juice, Bambuza, Calliope's. As you know, with COVID happening, some of those opening dates were impacted, and so there was a lot happening. The numbers displayed here are not reflective of post-COVID. These numbers are reflective of pre-COVID. So I do want to have that disclaimers in case there are questions about how things have been impacted within the last few months. For our food and beverage, our in-terminal concessions referred to as food and retail, our goal was 12.9%. We exceeded that by achieving 26%. I will note that out of 80 concession locations, 22 of them are ACDBE, either as through direct ownership or joint venture partnerships. I attribute this outstanding amount of DB participation within this program to the concessions team working really closely with the Port Small Business team whenever new opportunities arise. We work really hard together to ensure opportunities are communicated to diverse communities, and we provide one-on-one support to interested small businesses seeking these concessions leases. Car rental concessions, we unfortunately fell short of our 1.3% goal. We achieved only 0.23%. Car rental participation is achieved by our car rentals agencies utilizing ACDB firms for services and supplies such as vehicle maintenance or parts. We performed an analysis to determine why car rental companies were not meeting goals and determined they were in fact using ACDB vendors, but those vendors were certified in other states. This prevented the Port from counting that participation in our own program. To help overcome this issue, the Port Small Business team had planned for a rental car supplier diversity outreach event that was going to be held in April of 2020. However, due to COVID, that event had to be canceled, and we are now looking at opportunities to hold a similar event virtually for 2021. Next slide. As you can see, the graph illustrates the history of achievement for our food and retail, as well as our car rental concessions. We have a history of exceeding that goal for food and beverage, and we are looking at raising that goal with our new training goal that will be submitted to the FAA this month. It's going to be submitted this month. So you'll see that 12.9% goal raised greatly because we now have enough historical data to justify the increase of the goal. Next slide. The Mentor Protege program, my favorite program to report on, so you'll see big smiles for me when I talk about this one. The Port's Mentor Protege program was established in 1995 to overcome barriers preventing minority and women-owned businesses from gaining port contracts. The three-year program uses a three-prong approach combining mentorship, education, and technical services, providing full wraparound support to small business owners to help them grow their business strategically. The program is administered in partnership with the Oregon Department of Transportation, who contributes $150,000 per year. We match those funds to administer the program. That way we're combining forces, and it gives us the ability to reach more small businesses and to provide more services when we combine the powers together, as opposed to administering our own programs separately. Mentorship is the main element in our program. The mentor team is comprised of two mentors, one with industry-specific background, one with a financial background. Someone can help them make strategic financial decisions within their business. The team works collaboratively through facilitated meetings to identify and remedy weaknesses and develop a strategic plan for growth. Our education component, each protege is placed in a learning cohort where they attend monthly business classes taught by industry experts. These classes also give them needed CEU or CCB credit so they can maintain their various licenses as needed. And then finally, we have targeted technical services. The Port provides these services, which typically include bookkeeping, project managing, bonding, software, marketing. Our goal in support services is not to use a one-size-fits-all approach, but rather match services to the firm's to the exact need that the firm needs at the time they're in the program. We don't believe that everybody's in the same starting point in the race, so really taking a look at what does this business need right now, and then providing technical services to help them where they're at. Last year, we were really, really busy. We graduated 11 firms from the program and recruited 15 new small businesses into the program, all virtually. So this was a very hectic time period for our team. This current graduating class, I feel, did outstanding. We saw an increase in both revenue and bonding capacity, and we saw 58 new jobs were created with this cohort, and that's just with 11 businesses. So when you think about the impact, those 58 jobs are from diverse communities because they're hiring people that look like them. I love seeing that happen. This is what this program is all about. We also saw $9.5 million in contracts awarded to all proteges, past and present, within the program. This is outstanding. This means that we are able to get the word out and share our graduation directory with potential vendors. I feel like I'm Oprah sometimes at pre-bids. You get a list, you get a list, you get a list. I'm handing out lists of graduated proteges, making sure that I'm connecting them to opportunities at the port. So when I see this number, it just gives me all happy. I do the little happy dance. You can't see it, but I do it. So this here is where the rubber hits the road. It really makes a difference in ensuring that we can figure out where the barrier is for this individual business and then work to overcome it so that they can gain the opportunity to be not only a subcontractor on a port project, but a prime as well. So we're really working hard to elevate these businesses, and not only with the port opportunities, but with opportunities outside of the port with our industry partners such as ODOT in the city or the county. Next slide. Finally, I don't know if I can say enough about the compliance officers, because really this is where I feel like the rubber does hit the road. The Port Small Business Compliance Team administers the Port's small business and workforce programs in compliance with federal and state regulations. They do this work by monitoring contracts from inception through closeout. They are the first line of support when contractors are failing to meet their small business goals and are able to intervene early to assist them getting back on track instead of waiting until the end of the contract when it's just too late. Contract compliance typically includes establishing contract goals, regular compliance monitoring meetings, prompt payment monitoring, that's making sure folks are getting paid quickly, not 6 months down the line, dispute resolution, job site, commercially useful function reviews, commonly referred to as CUF reviews. Interestingly, CUF reviews are a federal requirement, and they ensure small businesses who were awarded the contract are actually performing the work. Compliance officers go out there with hard hat, construction boots and safety vests and all the gear. They go out to construction sites and they verify that the work that was promised to the small business is actually being performed by the small business. They do this through interviews with workers out in the field, verifying equipment ownership, and just looking to see, is this a DBE firm that's out here? This is important because it prevents fraud in our small business program, and it ensures that contract dollars earmarked for diverse and disadvantaged businesses are actually getting to them. You would not believe how much fraud happens in these programs when no one's looking. In addition to this work, they support the overall program by providing internal guidance around the small business program process, individual department support, small business RFP evaluations, and they organize project-specific outreach events to ensure small businesses know the opportunities and have the tools and resources they need to be ready to bid. In 2018, the Port conducted a disparity study which indicated the Port's existing small business department was understaffed for the size of its program. Toward the end of the study, we added one position to the team. This last year, we added another full-time position and welcomed Finus Hudson as our newest compliance officer. He comes by way of Atlanta, Georgia, so we imported him all the way from the East Coast. And he has a vast knowledge of contract compliance activity, having come from the Atlanta Mayor's office. With this addition, we were able to increase our contract monitoring efforts, ensuring small business goals are being met on port contracts. So good job, Nina and Hudson, I know if you're listening. Next slide, please. All right, so here's what we got going on for next year. The Port the Port Small Business Team will be implementing the Green Dot anti-harassment and bullying program on port construction projects. This is really making sure that our construction projects, job sites are safe and welcoming to women and Black, Indigenous, and persons of colors. We want to make sure that those that are diverse aren't being harassed, bullied, hazed. It happens more often than not on some job sites, so we're implementing an anti-harassment program. We want to ensure that everyone is safe when they come to a port project. We will be working collaboratively with the Ports Department to review small business participation on current contracts, and we'll be identifying future opportunities. So what this means, this is what Nina Jones lovingly refers to as a small business tune-up. So she's going to be working with each department to take a look at what are you buying and where did you miss the opportunity to use a small business, and what technique did you use so that you could maximize those opportunities. And so she's going to be doing that on a department by department level and really kind of getting granularly. So, you know, for example, if the marketing department is buying swag, let's show them how to find diverse vendors for that swag, right? So this is going to be, I find it fun work, but I'm kind of a small business nerd to really kind of dig in there and see where those opportunities are and then connect them to small businesses that can provide services for them. We'll be exploring ways to increase small businesses through port contracting opportunities. We're going to kind of look at how do we currently solicit for small business participation and how can we adjust that so that we're maximizing opportunities within that. And then we're going to be exploring additional opportunities for technical assistance. So we have our mentor protege program, but how do we roll that out port-wide? How do we expand that? So we've got a lot of work developing, expanding our current program, and I can't wait to report next year on how we did on all that. Next slide. And that's everything. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Kimberly, for your work and for the work of your team. It sounds like both needful work and work that keeps you very busy, which we appreciate on behalf of the community. I see Commissioner Alexander.
Commissioner Saruda was in first, so Madam President.
Thank you, Commissioner Saruda.
Age before beauty, huh? Thank you very much, Ms. Sutton. Extremely interesting and great work that is being done by the port. I fully appreciate and support the port's work and focus on these areas. One quick question. In terms of MPP, I think that stands for Mentor Protege Program.
Yes.
You said that the program has been, I guess, since 1995 inception, and 125 graduates so far. Just quick question: do you does the program allows or the includes I guess after graduation the I guess tracking or monitoring, or they keep track of those graduates, how things may have worked in one way or the other? That would be great. I guess that the addition to this kind of program, if you do you have that, or are you thinking of having it?
So we actually do track that. We track it for 3 years. It's part of our IGA agreement with ODOT. They pay for their half of the program through an FHWA grant, and part of that grant requirement is that we track and monitor how they do post-graduation. So we monitor that for 3 years post-graduation. We ask voluntarily after that for businesses to provide information, but as you can imagine, that's it's hit and miss whether somebody wants to paperwork and self-report. One thing that we do, however, is we're continually trying to maintain engagement with our graduates of the program. And so we have, well, I will say we used to have, and I'm hoping after post-COVID we'll bring them back, but we would have monthly speaker series. And so what that was every one day a month, we would have a networking get together at a mentor's business office. The mentor would provide dinner and really in-person networking with the strategic partners and the decision makers within that business. And then we would invite all of the graduated and current proteges to come attend, and they would talk about various business topics, but more importantly, they would just network and stay engaged with the program. That's been really beneficial for us to kind of just connect with them and say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that you need? When a protege graduates the program, they're not like, you're cut off, you're done. We check in with them, and if they go, you know what, I kind of got behind in my bookkeeping, I need help, then we'll send a resource to kind of sit down with them and help them get back on track. So we kind of do check-in corrective. And those are probably the proteges we hear most from when they get stuck on something, or it's a complicated bid and they come back to the program and they want help putting an estimate together for a project because it's a little bit outside. We've also had proteges go through the program in the 90s, grow, hit a stall, and then come back through the program again because they want to grow again. So, you know, we don't cut them off. We try to engage them, but it really is up to them and how much engagement they want to have while they're busy growing their business. As you can imagine, being a business owner, you're wearing a lot of hats. And so it just depends on if they have time.
I understand, you know, every initiative such as this, you know, there is a goal and there is an actual process and there is outcomes. And so in terms of outcome, as a supporter and enthusiastic, I guess the view that I have for something like this, great, nice. I'd love to, you know what the outcomes are. And I understand some sensitivities about all of these things, but anyway, that was my question. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Alexander, and then Commissioner McDonald.
All right, thank you, Madam President. I also want to offer my my appreciation for the work that's been conducted over the last year. I do remember distinctly the disparity study in 2018 that talked about the ambitious goals of the program, but the limited resources. And to know that your team has grown since that time and you've been able to bring on additional staff to help direct this work, I think is an indication of the commitment of leadership and you to making sure that our aspirations become things that are actually manageable and achievable. And I also want to say that I appreciate the effort that's being spent in the department tune-up. And I think many of us have worked with organizations who often create an expectation of a path for others to follow, but have not necessarily modeled what they want to see. And this is clearly an illustration of modeling what it is that you want to see in terms of taking full advantage of potential missed opportunities. So again, offer appreciation for the work. Hopefully it will not be overcome by some of the downstream impacts of Corona. I mean, these are small businesses. They're dependent on income streams that are under multiple assaults and attack right now. So hopefully we'll be able to weather this together. But I did want to just thank you, and please extend the same to your team as well. Outstanding effort.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe one comment to add, Commissioner Alexander, is, as you know, the port's been going through a series of budget reductions over the last 12 months, and the mentor protege program was not impacted by that for reasons, as you can hear now, the success of the program and the direction that we're really enhancing our emphasis on shared prosperity. We actually would like to see this program grow, and so we will be looking at that really within the next year about how do we enhance this program to provide more opportunity for small business in the future.
Commissioner McDonald and then Commissioner Nemi.
Thank you, Bobby. I think that's a great investment in the future. And I wanted to just continue the rolling thunder of applause, Kim, for you and your team and for the program. I think the Mentor Protege program is absolutely a role model for not only the state, but I would say the nation as well as the world. This is just fantastic, the work you're doing. Thank you very much. And let's keep this in front of us. We definitely want to keep this going. As Commissioner Alexander stated, the small business impact of the coronavirus pandemic is yet to be fully seen, and we'll want to continue to support this program and meet any unforeseen challenges that you might come upon. Please bring them to us for our help. I know you'll get our full engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, I really appreciated in the Zoom world or the Teams world, just such an energetic presentation. So really appreciate that, Kim. I know it's not easy to do. To thread this conversation to the conversation we were having earlier, I know that in the workplace initiative, there was mention of minority women small business in that. Do you know, or does anyone that's of the other staff know if any of the ASPs, airline service providers, are actually minority women small business owned?
I don't have a direct relationship with the airline service provider, so I would not be able to answer that.
Dan Pippinger, are you still with us? We can certainly get that information, Commissioner. I don't think so, but Dan, I don't know if you have better information than I do.
That is what I think also, Curtis. I don't know 100%, but I don't think so. I think the reference that was brought up was more to our concessions program.
But the policy being proposed by the staff doesn't impact the concessions.
That is correct. I'm just addressing that comment.
Okay, I'm like doubling back. Okay. Thank you.
You know, it's worth noting, Commissioner, it's Curtis. We'd love to use Kimberly's work as a model to help in other parts of our business as well. She's been really successful. She and I have talked a lot about ODOT, who is a partner in this work. They help with some of the funding. They also are interested in learning more, and sort of, I think, to the extent we're able to help other entities get better at this, it would be, it would be beneficial for all of us. I do think we're thinking more about where else can we leverage these skills. Some of that has been limited by capacity and our own funding, as I think folks have heard about. But I do think there's more work, and we'll definitely, to Commissioner McDonald's point, we'll be back to you with more information around how we're working on learning from our successes and learning lessons from the things that haven't gone as well. But this is a great program, and Kimberly and her team just do a great job.
Thank you, Commissioner Lamb.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your updates on the small business participation. And I have to say that I'm very proud of what Port community has done for to encourage small business, minority-owned business participation here at PDX. But as we round the corner of pandemic and looking forward to the new year, we'll be faced a new set of challenges to small business participation. Even though the program now is very successful, I would encourage the staff to continue to look into ways to bridge the gap in financing or loans for small businesses to build or to improve or to sustain the businesses. I have to say that right now the bank is not looking promising or willing to even talk to small businesses. And that's why I would welcome and encourage the Port staff for their creative thinking to bridge the gap and get us through these special circumstances. We as the Port may risk of losing our progress that achieved and could make it impossible for small independent businesses to have a fair shot at opportunity here at PDX. So I would just continue to keep that in mind. And Bobby and Kimberly, your work are critical, and I'm very proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comment on this topic? Okay, thank you, Kimberly, again, for all of the work.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on to our consent items. I want to ask if any commissioner wants a presentation on the consent items. I'll read the titles. They are Port of Portland Contracting Rules 2020 Update and the Personal Services Contracts, On-Call Materials Management and Emergency Response Services, Port of Portland Properties. Okay, No request for a presentation. I will call for a motion and second for approval of the consent items.
I will so move.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Pam, could you lead us through the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
and Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Pippinger, you have the next agenda item, please. I'm sorry, I'm going out of order. We have Vince Granado to introduce the first agenda item.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. So I'm here with George Seaman, the project manager for our Terminal Core redevelopment project. And we're here this morning to talk about a pretty large contract amendment for the Hoffman-Skanska team, who's the contractor on this project. As Curtis talked about in his executive director report, in January, we're going to start some of the demolition of the existing facilities, including that connecting corridor. So this contract amendment is for the demolition components that are happening here in the terminal building, and also some of the mechanical and the electrical work that's coming. And we spent quite a bit of time with the airlines, the operations team, contractors, really to develop a plan to how to efficiently allow for the construction, but to have the least amount of impact on employees, tenants, and of course the traveling public. This is the most complicated project we've ever done, obviously, as we're getting into the main terminal building. So what we wanted to walk you through today before we actually get to the formal item itself is the project execution plan. It's a 12-phase plan that that the team has put together, where they've really identified all the different components that it's going to take. So we're going to walk you through that first, and then we'll have George do the formal amendment itself. So hopefully you'll get a sense of some of the complexities that we're going to be dealing with. Again, this part here for this contract is about some demolition, some early mechanical work. So George, I'll turn it over to you here and have you walk through the plan.
Okay, thanks, Vince. Next slide, please. So as Vince mentioned, we're asking for approval to amend the Hoffman-Skanska contract for demolition, early MEP, some logistics, and general conditions in an amount of about $248 million. Next slide. Thank you. So here's an image of the overall terminal. I think you've seen this multiple times, and the Hoffman-Skanska team put together this 12-phase program to help explain the project. I'll try to link the phases to some past commission approvals to help kind of bridge the overall project. Next slide, please. So the first step was the enabling work for the installation of the Y columns that are going to hold up the roof. Commission approved this work in February 2020 as a part of the $71 million agenda item. This really is the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, and the plumbing work and the architectural work for the installation of these columns. During the next year, we'll at these locations where the columns of the 6 squares are in the middle of kind of the Oregon Market area, down in the deplaning area, we'll be eliminating and removing the concrete slabs, drilling 16 to 20 piles down to about 125 to 150 feet deep to hold up the slabs, then filling it back in with the pile cap, and then eventually putting the piles the columns on top of that. This work also included some early bag makeup devices. Bag makeup devices are the devices where the airlines, after TSA screens the bags, the airlines then take the bags off the makeup devices, off the baggage carts, and stick them out to the planes. We installed makeup device C1 on the south side and makeup device 10 on the north side. Both of those were installed to give capacity as we did some of the column work and the disruptions to the airline's operations during the project. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the makeup C1 unit. At this point in time, Delta has actually moved into this unit for operations from the north side of the airport to the south side because of some of the ticket lobby modifications that they will talk about. They will stay on this device throughout the project until the new ticket lobby comes up towards the end of 2023. Next slide. Step 2 was the site civil work. So Commission approved this in March of 2020. It was about a $72 million amendment. This step relocates all of the utilities, the fuel systems, the water, the wastewater, the stormwater. All those utilities are within the footprint of the western expansion extension. They'll now be moved outside of the building. But also, in order to do this work and construct the western expansion, the loading dock in the alleyway will need to be closed, which required duplication of the services that occur there. In the blue area, there's some temporary waste facilities and recycling centers that were built for the north and the south side of the construction. Those are in operation. And then the second area is the central receiving and distribution center. The CRDC is complete. That's at the cabin services building. Commission approved, I think it was back last February for that work. That actually service starts operation this Saturday, which will allow us to shut down the loading docks. Next slide, please. Here's a picture from last week of some of the work occurring in the alleyway. Civil work has been progressing. At the front half of this picture, and kind of the front and the right-hand side, is a freeze pit. So you can see the white colored barriers are along the sides. We'll be digging that pit about 25 feet deep. The outside is frozen to really hold back any of the soil that would slough into the pit. We'll also have pits on the north and south side of Concourse D and then the south side of Concourse C, and that's to allow the fuel system, which currently runs into Western Expansion footprint, to be re-drilled and go under the Concourse Corridor connector, or sorry, under the concourses, as well as the tunnels. The pit right now is about 10 feet deep. It'll get about another 15 feet deeper. So as you see, most of the alleyway is shut down. There's a vehicle service road on the far north side is still open. Next week, when the CRDC becomes operational, the remainder of the alleyway will shut down. All work here should be complete by next summer, and then we start the construction of the western expansion. Next slide. So step 3 was moving the south security checkpoint. It was from July of 20 to November of 20. Commission approved this work in April of 2020 as a part of about a $31 million amendment. This was the key prep work for the new throats, which are all accessing security and the demolition of the Oregon market. Next slide. So here's a picture of the relocated lanes. These were relocated, I think it was November 3rd, full operation occurred. It required eliminating of the remember the rocket ship flight information display that was in the middle of this area of the south node. That's been eliminated. You can look at the top of the screen, you see kind of the canopy under which the lanes previously resided. So they've all been moved out. The exit lane was modified. The rocket ship was removed, and the security lanes have been moved, and that was all completed and operational. I think it was November 3rd. Next slide. So with moving south security checkpoint lanes, we can now start construction of the new throats to access the security lanes. In order to do this, the Delta ticket counters were moved to the center of the ticket lobby, and Alaska ticket counters were also slid down a little bit, and some common use ticket counters were installed just to the south of the Alaska lanes. This demolition will also require demolition of all the airline ticket offices, the ATO space. So we built trailers underneath the ramp for the ATOs. Those are functional and operational right now. Delta and common use carriers have already moved down there. Southwest and Alaska will move in January, and then in February, American Airlines will move down. We've started construction of the new throats. And next slide, please. Here's a picture of the new Delta ticket counters. Basically, Delta moved down to where Southwest was prior to the terminal balancing project. United moved to the far north. Southwest moved to where United was, and now we moved Delta to where Southwest was. And that's part of why Delta's baggage services moved to the far south end with the makeup C1 makeup unit, because this was where where Southwest was before on the far south side. Even though their flights stay on the north, their makeup device will stay on the south. Next slide. There we go. So step 5, which will really start next year with the removal of the Concourse Corridor connector, is to give the passengers a safe path around the construction site. Commission approved this as a part of the April 2020 $31 million amendment. This will include new traffic patterns for the passengers, which will provide improved construction logistics, but also a safer environment and a better experience for the passengers. When the CRDC gets operational, as Curtis mentioned earlier, the Concourse Corridor connector will be removed and closed to operations on January 5th. And that will allow us really to demo that whole area. We will relocate and reuse the Concourse Corridor connector as a part of these pathways around the outside of the construction site. The Concourse Corridor connector was really constructed in 3 significant sections. 2 of them will go to the north, 1 will go to the south, and then we'll extend those bypasses with some stick-built extensions. And this will allow the passengers to completely go around the construction site. On the north side, it will go from gate E1 to gate D3, and on the south side, it'll go from gate B1 to where the Hollywood Theater is now. The Hollywood Theater will be relocated further down Concourse C. And these bypasses will stay in operation fully throughout the construction project. Next slide. So a big portion of today's amendment request is to allow demolition to occur. Starting April 5th, we will shut down the Oregon Market. The new throats will be operational, and we'll shut down the Oregon Market as well as the center section of the mezzanine section. We'll build construction barriers around the demolition area and then begin the soft demolition of the space. So we'll remove walls, anything that's left in the space, and then we'll begin the seismic improvement of the existing building. So we'll require improving the slab of the existing old 1956 building where the Oregon Market is. And then when that's done, we'll begin waterproofing the floor. Next slide. So step 7 starts when really the waterproofing is done on the Oregon Market floor. We'll do the hard demo, and that really requires removing all of the structure for the existing building. We'll build new barriers at the end of C and D. Separate the construction activities at the end of the concourses, as well as extend things around the Oregon Market area, and then starting in October, really hard demo of the space. It's take about 4 months to remove the entire structure and prepare for the installation of the new structure. Next slide. So here's an image from, I think it was the February Commission briefing. It'll show the Oregon Market with when it's demolished prior to the roof being installed. And at this point, I mentioned the waterproofing. The floor of the emplaning level becomes the roof of the building over top of the baggage systems and all of the support area we have downstairs. Next slide. So starting in starting right now, we've already started some of the prefabrication of the roof. In February, Commission approved the construction of the prefabrication facility as a part of the $72 million amendment. The facility is complete, and I'll show a picture of that coming forward. In August of 20, Commission approved the structural steel and the roof wood package as a part of a $230 million amendment. So the glulam beams have begun fabrication. We've awarded the contracts and started fabrication of the steel girders. All of those will come together in the January timeframe. We'll start prefabricating the roof. Next slide. So here's a picture basically from the fire station looking back towards the terminal of the new prefabrication facility. So most of the new concrete you see in the distance was put in, and that is where the roof will be constructed 8 to 10 feet off the ground and allow us to cost effectively put a lot of the mechanical systems, the electrical, and just put the roof together in a safe environment. The roof will be prefabricated really throughout 2021. Next slide. And then starting in about February of 22, the roof will start getting disassembled, and then we'll travel, be brought in the 150 by 120 foot sections over to the terminal building. The columns will be installed first, then temporary support steel shoring towers at the Oregon market to hold the roof, and then the roof section over a 3-night period. Each of those sections will be slid into place. Night 1, the roof will move from the prefab yard to sections, take that travel path over to the terminal building. Night 2 will slide halfway into place, be tied down over the shoring towers, and then night 3 be put into permanent location, and all the seismic supports will be installed. The intent is by October of 22, the new roof is over the terminal building, the western expansion and the center section of the terminal building. Next slide. Step 9, when the roof is in place, we'll then do the remainder of the western expansion can be built out. Commission has already approved the structural portion of this work in August $230 million amendment. The remainder of the interior fit up will come later next year with the final guaranteed maximum price amendment. So this work here, starting October 22, when the roof's complete, will include installing the curtain wall, enclosing the building, weather tight, making it weather tight, and then completing all the interiors in the building. Right now, the plan is that work will be complete about 3 years from now, November of 2023. Next slide. When the western expansion is operational, the new ticket lobby is operational, security is moved, we'll then start the node replacement. The south node goes first. Again, the structural portion of this work Commission has already approved, but the interior improvements will come with the final GMP amendment. The construction phasing is very similar here to what we'll do on the Oregon market. We'll shut the space, build the construction barriers, do the soft demolition, waterproof the floor, remove the remaining structure, install the roof, install the curtain wall, weather tight the building, and build out the interiors. This work in the south node should take about 14 months, starting November of 23. Still working on some of the phasing on the front of house, how that is integrated with opening up the ticket halls, but we'll bring that back to Commission as we get more information. Throughout this process, the bypasses will remain in place. So passengers will still go around the construction site utilizing the bypasses. Next slide. So the north node is constructed really about a 2-month lag on the south node. So it'll start January 24 to March of 25. And at that point, we'll have both nodes complete. Next slide, please. Then step 12 is project completion. We'll remove the bypasses, reconstruct some areas around Concourse C. There's be some temporary restrooms that will remove and extend gates C3, C5, and C7 together. Eliminate the old Alaska Lounge. Some new restrooms get built there, and then get all the gates that have been impacted, E1, D3, and B1 back up in operation. And this should be complete by May of 25. Next slide. So from a schedule perspective, I think I've talked a lot about the western expansion and TCOR itself. Concourse B is on schedule for completion in October, November timeframe of next year. We anticipate being back to Commission a few times over the next 2 years for a couple of amendments for the Hoffman-Skanska team, as well as construction administration for the ZGF team, and probably some testing and commissioning amendments. Next slide. I've talked about a lot of these previous contract amendments in the last portion of it. I didn't address really the Concourse B. In March of 19 and September of 19, Commission approved the Concourse B work with the enabling, which took Horizon operations to the end of C, and then the main construction, which I just mentioned, the schedule implications. We also have brought to Commission a couple of contract amendments that were allowed for cost-effective and operational effectiveness reasons, the passenger boarding bridge and the terminal area relamp. And then about a year ago, Commission approved a couple of smaller contract amendments for job site trailers and the occupant safety plan. So to date, Commission has approved about $537 million for the Hoffman-Skanska contract. Next slide. We anticipate being back in the spring for a couple of long lead items, probably the vertical transportation, the escalators, the elevators, and we're evaluating are there any other long lead items that we want to bring earlier prior to the completion of design, which is scheduled for June of next year. With the completion of design, we anticipate bringing the guaranteed maximum price for the remainder of the project in mid-2021 for about $400 million, and then probably in mid-22 we'll bring some like TI work, which will be automated security lanes, any other maybe small projects that will come in. Next slide. Total construction contract at this point is about $1.18 million. Contingencies about $160 million. Over the last couple of months, we've used about $15 million of the project's contingencies for cost increases as the project design has been refined and completed. This is still about a 10% contingency level, which we feel is still adequate based upon the amount of work that's already been bid and the level of the design on the project. Construction small business participation goal is 20%. We're tracking a little bit under that with this package because of the heavy structural aspects of it and demo aspects. But we anticipate getting it back up to 20%, especially as we get to the building interiors and the finishes. So where the Hoffman-Skanska team is working with Kimberly's team, really to make sure we have the opportunity and the ability to drive this back up to 20% or more. Next slide. So overall contracts, we've awarded about $537 million to date. With this will be about $785. I just wanted to comment that this amendment is within the project plan and the budget, and it will not require any additional request of the airlines. So this is just a phased approach as we've planned the project out. Next slide. Staff recommends approval of the executive director's recommendation. Any questions?
Thank you, George, for the presentation. Lots of good information there about a really complicated project. I wondered where we are in terms of, I'm having a hard time with thinking about budget and all of the different phases and packages. Just trying to get a sense of, with respect to the pieces that we've already approved, where we are we on budget with them effectively? And I know that some of them are long occurring, so not completed yet, but just want to get a sense of where we are in terms of budget and what we've already approved.
Yep. Yes, we are on budget. We're tracking. We do continuous tracking with the construction team on contingency utilization, but basically, yeah, we are tracking on budget.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Does the 1.6 billion that you showed on the one sheet, does that include the forecasted 460? Okay, so that's all your best estimates.
Yeah, the 1.6 also includes the Concourse B work at about 116 million, and it also includes the fit up of the the top 3 floors of the rental car center of the Packer project, which is housing Port Police, TSA, and the comm center. That was about 80 million. So that's about 200 million there, and about 1.45 is T-Core, but it's all included in the 1.6.
Okay, thank you, because it just was kind of like Alice's question, where it's a big project.
They're big numbers.
Yeah, big numbers. Thank you.
Commissioner McDonald?
George, thank you for the overview. Very well done. And the progress is really impressive. I'm glad we have this. We can take some opportunity while travel is light to get so much construction done.
Yep.
That being said, I'm wondering if you're anticipating, especially on your long lead items, any impact to the supply chain as we get more into what is going to be very good news, which is going to be the vaccine and treatment distribution. Any anticipated supply chain impacts to the project? And my second question is, are you seeing any changes in materials pricing and costs as a result of construction going quite well globally, actually, because many organizations are doing as we are, taking advantage of this moment in time?
Yeah, so 2-part question there, or 2-part answer. The first part is we haven't seen a lot of impacts to the supply chain yet, but it's certainly something we're keeping our fingers on the pulse of, because it is a concern, and that's one of the things we're looking at with long lead items to make sure that we don't have an issue. But a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with now is still the heavy, the concrete, the steel, the stuff that we're in pretty good shape with. From a pricing perspective, we actually have bids due in the next week and a half on some portion of it. So we'll see how we're doing. We had a recent bid on Horizon moving back to B when all things occur, and that came in about 20% under budget, 20 to 25% under budget, and that was good. So we'll have a big bid of that. $400 million of work you saw that we'll be bringing to commission really should be bid next summer. And we're seeing a lot of information out there from the contracting community that they're getting a lot of response to bids because of the economy, and prices have stayed relatively flat from a escalation perspective. But we'll see with this amount of work going out there, does that remain the same?
Well, all of that sounds like good news, George. Thank you.
Sure.
George, you want to talk a little bit about the wood story, however?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. I wanted to mention that on the pricing. We actually had priced out a significant increase in wood. I think we were counting on in our budget about, I think it was $650 per 1,000 linear feet. With the wildfires and with the whole COVID impact on wood, we were seeing about 2 months ago pricing close to about $1,200 per 1,000 linear feet. So we phased that actual purchase with our subcontractors. So they've actually bought about 35% of the glulam beams in the last couple of weeks. And that came in, I think, at $925. So they're trying to call it target the market, time the market a little bit, so we're not ordering everything at too high of pricing. And luckily, to a point with the wildfires, a lot of our partners, the mills and the glulam fabricators survived the wildfire, even though they were in areas right around them in the Eugene area.
Thank you. That's an important update. Any other questions from Commission? We have a big proposal in front of us. Okay, hearing no questions, I will ask for a motion and second to approve the Executive Director's recommendation.
I move.
Second.
Thank you, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy, Commissioner Levy? Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Nemi?
Aye.
O'Halloran?
Aye.
Pierce?
Aye.
And Saruda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next agenda item will be presented by Dan Pippinger.
Good morning again, commissioners. This is a request to approve a award of a 5-year security services contract for PDX and for other Port of Portland facilities. Work performed by this security contract is critical to regulatory compliance and ensuring safe and efficient operation at port facilities. The current contract is expiring at the end of this year, and there was a proposal request for proposals tendered earlier this year, and this is the resolution to that. And in addition to the qualifications and the project approach by the company awarded the contract or requesting to award the contract to, the evaluation did include social equity and small business participation goals. Here to introduce and walk through the award request with you is Atithi Barth, our Senior Aviation Security Manager. Atithi, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good morning, everyone. I'm Atithi, and I'm with the Aviation Security Department here at the port. Today, I am requesting an approval to award a security services contract to Global Security Consulting Group. Here's the scope of work that is associated with the contract. Restricting and verifying access, vehicle and vendor inspections, international passenger control, employee screening, and vendor product inspections. All of these functions are under Aviation Security Department. And then with the TSA regulatory compliance requirements, so we're required to perform these functions. Security officers will also do security and safety patrols at other port properties, and these properties are West Hayden Island, Rivergate Industrial Park, Troutdale, Reynolds Industrial Park are the 3 properties that we will subcontract this work to. Other port departments find it efficient to use this contract for both long-term and one-time events. These events may include neutral gates at a marine terminal, providing security at those gates, and also special events at Port HQ building. Next slide, please. In addition to these fixed staffing locations, security officers will also provide inspections and employee screening within the terminal at PDX. Next slide, please. Global Security Services contract will be for 5 years, going with this long-term plan to ensure consistency with construction projects and full employee screening efforts. The contract is estimated to be about $6.5 million. The evaluation criteria for this effort was divided into 6 sections. And these sections are qualifications of the provider, project team, project approach, cost of services, social equity, and also small business participation. Port evaluation team consisted of managers representing the port's aviation security, police, operations, and administrative services departments. A total of 8 proposals were submitted, and we reviewed all 8. That resulted in 2 interviews, and Global was considered as the best selection. Next slide, please. A few items that began to differentiate Global were the experience of the proposed on-site manager, robust and exclusive data analysis platform, and corporate social responsibilities codified into group's mission, corporate values, and ethics and codes. Key attributes are 15 years of industry recognition and aviation security awards. Global as a company and their project approach have extensive security and airport experience, which is the key to be working in this unique environment. Recently, with COVID restrictions, Global successfully completed a transition at San Diego Airport. Global will also provide unbilled on-site manager, and Global maintains an industry-leading 91% retention rate of its security officers assigned to the airport. Excuse me. As for pay and benefits, Global will pay $15 an hour to its officers, 70% medical premiums and 80% for dental and vision. Paid time off will be 9 days per year, and 401k company match program. The port will apply the workplace initiative to its contract at the appropriate time. As for equity, Global promotes a diverse workforce, notably at the management levels, with 85% of Global's regional directors and on-site program managers belonging to protected classes. Excuse me. Additionally, the percentage of female managers at all levels exceeds the percentage of women in their entire workforce. For the small business, Global will work with ACE Event Security Services for its contract, for this particular contract opportunity. And Global has committed to meeting Port's overall small business participation goal of 20%. ACE has already performed security services for multiple construction vendors working at PDX, and ACE Private Security is certified by Certification Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity as Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, Emerging Small Business Enterprise, Minority Business Enterprise, and Women Business Enterprise. Next slide, please. Therefore, staff requests approval for executive director's recommendation for this contract.
Thank you for the presentation. I have one question. I wondered, particularly given where we are socially, what safeguards this company has or training with respect to bias, for example, particularly given that these security officers will interact with members of the public. I don't know if we have a sense of that or if we've gathered any information on that question.
I personally have not, but I can definitely circle back with you guys.
Thank you. I have a hand up. I'm not sure.
That would be me.
Go ahead, Commissioner Alexander.
Just again, thank you very much for the presentation. The one question I had, are these sworn officers, are they armed officers?
They're not armed officers.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful to my question as well. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a motion and second to approve the executive director's recommendation.
I so move.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Pam.
Commissioners Alexander,
Aye.
Kupro-Comas,
Aye.
Lamb,
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Nemi,
Aye.
O'Halloran,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
and Saruda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned. Please stay safe and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.